Microeconomics, chapter number 4, demand and law of demand, second part. So, previous class we have discussed about the meaning of a demand, the law of demand, movement along the demand, and shift in the demand curve. So those are topics that we have discussed. So today we go ahead and discuss about a market demand. So far we have discussed only about consumers or individual demand or individuals demand for a commodity. So however, it is the market demand, it is a market demand for a commodity which is playing an important role in determining the price for a commodity. So it is actually the market demand and not the individual's demand for a commodity which will determine the prices. So it is a market demand which determines the price of a commodity. So what is market demand? So in simple term, market demand is the sum total of demands of all consumers in the market for a commodity at various prices. So we are summing up all the individuals' demand for a consumer in the market for a various commodity at various prices, then we get what is called a market demand. We are adding up or summing up all the consumers' demand and we get market demand. So therefore, we can also derive market demand of a commodity, by adding up all the quantities demanded of the commodity at various price by the consumers within a particular period of time. So we add up all the demand of a commodity by the consumers, individual consumers, to get the market demand. So here we are going to discuss the market demand by giving an example. Let us say there are 3 consumers. Let us say Rekha, Swati, and Karina. So these 3 consumers, Rekha, Swati, and Karina, their demand for a commodity are given here at a various price level. So from this consumers' demand, how do we arrive at the market demand? We are simply summing up all the individuals' demand to get a market demand at a certain price level. So at price 1, rupee 1, quantity demanded of Rekha is 16, quantity demanded by Swati is 11, so quantity demanded by Karina is 15 at the rupee 1 price for a commodity. So market demand will be, we add up demand of Rekha, demand of Swati, quantity demanded of Karina, and we get 42. So 42 is the market demand for a particular commodity which is costing at rupee 1. So likewise, at rupees 2, rupees 3, 4, 5, 6, we are adding up all the quantities demanded by all the particular consumers or individual consumers to get the market demand. So this is the market demand. And we got this by summing up all the individual or consumers' demand in the market for a particular price level. So again, we can explain this in the graphical representation. So we now plot the market, demand obtained in the last column. So we are obtaining the market demand here and we plot this number in a graphical form and we get somehow like this, the graphical representation of a market demand. So DD is the market demand. So by plotting the quantities demanded of all 3 consumers taken together at various price, we get the demand curve that is DD here. So this is DD represents the market demand. And how do we got this DD and how do we got this number? Because we have added up all the consumers or individual quantity demanded to get the market demand. So finally we get DD, which is the market demand curve. So how this summation of summation of this market demand is done is shown in this figure. So figure 6 in your book. So this is how we derive or how we are summing up the market demand through a or with the help of a consumer's demand. So suppose there are two individual buyers, let us say, consumers A and consumers B. So, figure 6A and B show the demand curves of the two independent, consumers. So A and B, figure A and B shows the independent consumers quantity demanded for a commodity at price level P1. So that is a consumers or individual or independent consumers quantity demanded for a commodity. So now the market demand curve can be obtained by adding together the amounts of the commodity which two individuals wish to buy at its price. How do we arrive at the market demand? We add up the quantity demanded by the two consumers to get the market demand at a certain price level. So how do we arrive this? So quantity demanded by individual A at price 1 P1 is OA1. So this much amount is demanded by consumer A, and OB1 is demanded by consumer B at P1 prices. So how do we arrive? How do we sum up this? Is shown in figure C, which is OQ equals OA1 plus OB1. So we are adding up OA1 plus OB1 to get OQ. So this is the market demand for a consumer A and B. So that is represented in the, curve, that is DD. So here we are measuring, in all this graph, we are measuring quantity demanded in the x-axis and price in the y-axis. So the price is constant here at P1. So DA is the demand curve for consumer A. DB is the consumers or quantity demanded by or demand curve of a consumer B. So in here, because of these two demand curve, that is demand curve of A and B, consumer A and B, we get DD as the market demand. And how we got this DD market demand? It is by summing up the demand curve of consumer A and B. The quantity demanded of A and B is summed up or add up to get the OQ quantity of, market value, or OQ quantity demanded, amount of quantity demanded, to get the DD market demand curve. So that is how we sum up the, independent consumers demand to get a market demand curve. And here we are talking about only two consumer. So similarly, we can find the quantity of the good that will be demanded by two individuals at every other, price of the good. Here we are talking about two consumer and at a constant price level, that is just price is just 1. So we can find out the quantity demanded, how much the quantity demanded, how much it will be, demanded. We can find out at different price level also. So in all this example, we have assumed that, for a convenience sake, we have assumed that there are two individuals only. There are only two individuals or buyers in the market for a good. So whatever be the number of individuals present in the market, their demand curves can be added together. Whatever number of consumers, it can be added together as, illustrated here. So to get a market demand curve from the, various buyers or various consumers, so the market demand curve slopes downward, as we see here. It always slopes downwards towards the right. Since, the normal slope downward to the right, they normally slope downward, since the individual demand curve, whose lateral summation gives us the market demand curve, also slopes downward. Since individual demand curve also slopes downward, even the market demand curve will also slopes downward towards the right. So besides, a price of a good falls, as price of the good falls, it is very likely that the new buyers will enter the market. Once price for a commodity falls, a new buyer will enter the market. It is likely to happen. So they will further rise the quantity demanded of the good when the price is low. So this will be another reason why market demand curve of a good slopes downward towards the right.